All right, welcome everyone to our panel. Thank you for joining us. The title is, what is it? Communicating culture creatively. It's like an alliteration. It doesn't necessarily roll off the tongue. My name is Glen Henry, face and fingers behind Spritewrench Studios, a small micro studio based out of Kingston, Jamaica. We prioritize narrative titles and such. And with me, I have my good friends and members of the Jamaica Game Developers Society, Zane and Graham. Take it
So,
away, guys. Introduce yourselves.
All right, well,
Zane?
I'm Zane. I'm lead at a small studio based out of Kingston, Jamaica, as well. Just Dev Studios, uh, uh, developer in software, games. Love creating, and yeah.
cool. And I'm Graham, also known as Graham of Legend. I'm actually not based in Jamaica, sadly. I'm based in New York, and I'm currently a one man band working on a game called Super Space Club.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. So first question for the panel to just kind of get things rolling. What is culture? Like, what does that mean to you, as a Jamaican, as a member of the Global South, and as a game developer?
It's a
Zane?
very it's a big question.
Yeah, it's deep, right?
It's a very deep question, yeah. But I mean, off the top of my head, when I think of culture, I just think of Jamaica. Like we are such a culture-rich community, culture-rich island.
Hmm.
Like when you think of our music, when you think of our food, there's all the different aspects that make up our language. Like everything is just cultural.
Hmm.
It's hard to think of Jamaica and not think of culture.
Hmm.
So it's everything.
I mean, for me, it definitely leads with the food for sure, because you said the word culture, and I immediately thought about beef patties.
Yeah.
And so
Oh, I
that
wish.
Jamaica is definitely a culturally rich place. The music, as Graham
Hmm.
said, the food, the people. Um, there's a lot of stories and lore in Jamaica when it comes down to culture. We're a country that has been shaped by many different cultures
Hmm.
from around the world,
Right.
or matter out of many one people. Culture is a huge thing that is defended in Jamaica heavily, as
Hmm.
much as even more heavily than we like to spread our culture globally, through the music, through drama, through the arts in general. The culture is very strong with Jamaica, and culture just represents the people.
Okay. All right. I mean, I like both of your definitions. For me, it might be a little bit like too artistic, but I think like culture is like the story about ourselves that we tell ourselves, right? So it's the pieces of art, the pieces of music, the pieces of food, all of those pieces that kind of come together that kind of builds an identity for like our people. So for Jamaica specifically, like we love our reggae music. That's what we stand for. We love the food, the jerk chicken, that type of thing. Dancehall, all of that comes together to kind of define how we see ourselves. We're loud, we're
Right.
proud, we're in your face kind of thing. Despite our small size, like that becomes part of it, which is really interesting when you think about it, because no one person then becomes responsible for that story. It's like
Hmm.
we're just echoing back and forth, and it just kind of grows and grows and grows. And then as we identify with pieces of it, we kind of build on that myth, that mythos of what it is to be an like a Jamaican, uh, Trinidadian, Guyanese person, a Bayesian. All of those things come together to kind of define who you are, where, and I guess it's defined in part from where you come from,
Yeah.
but it's heavy, right? So just building onto that and rolling really quickly into like the second topic, it's like how do we like how do we as creatives like interact with that? How do we take that backdrop and use that in our daily lives? I mean, we mentioned food, um, but some of it feels like it goes past that.
Well, you see, I love that you mentioned the stories because when you think about Jamaican culture as a Jamaican, one of the first places you go is the stories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and immediately what comes to my mind is Carnival and Junkanoo. Junkanoo more than Carnival,
Mm-hmm.
because you think about things like Pichi Pachi and how we um, even clothing. Clothing is a part of culture, and that is how we've represented that. In a lot of our culture can be seen in the cultural clothing that we wear, and the stories that we tell depend heavily upon that visual display. Um, the the stories that we tell are long-standing stories from the colonial era, um, influenced by colonialism and the movement of the people over here through the the slave trade and what came out of that, and the movement of people from all over the place to come into the Jamaican community and the Caribbean community overall to create this mix of cultures and stories. You're talking about stories from West African religion and lore. You're
Mm-hmm.
talking about stories from Indian culture. You're talking
Mm-hmm.
about stories from South American culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's all amalgamated into our culture and the stories that we tell. And those stories are things that, even though the younger generation now might not be as in tune with it, almost
Mm-hmm.
everybody knows some form of these stories, like Rolling Calf. And like, I mean, we didn't grow up fearing rolling calf like our parents, because
No.
I mean, a lot of them, a lot of people had, especially in the country, the cows in the pasture with the chains. So
Mm-hmm.
you'd hear the chains and they talk about rolling calf, and that to this day people talk about that, and it's in the music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a lot of where our stories come out in the music.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I see that. I like that you brought up the point of how it grew and took from the other groups that would have been part of our colonial tradition, right? Which kind of leaves this weird dynamic because we are very protective of our history,
Mhm,
right? We want to ensure that it's you know it's ours, that it doesn't get exploited in some kind of way.
mhm,
But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that you know
The reason it exists.
it
Like,
reason it exists and
right.
it's borrowing from other places. So it's
yeah,
not something that existed in a vacuum.
Right.
yeah,
It grew. So when you say stuff like um, rolling calf definitely meant something different for our parents than it does
yeah,
for us. I rather it sounds to me almost as if you're hinting at like it's diluting a bit, and I wouldn't say that is necessarily diluting. I say it's like it's change, it's mutation, it's shifting probably like laterally
mhm.
because we as millennials and then incoming the Gen Z coming in.
Well, there's
Zillennials.
millennials, like.
I can yeah. I
That's
mean
culture.
Wow.
Right? That's a cultural difference, right?
exactly right there right them coming in um represents like a completely different zeitgeist. I don't know why I can say zeitgeist, but I can't say millennials. Oh, I can't.
This is
But
millennials.
yeah,
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. We know what you mean.
um, like that is culture in itself. That is
Mhm.
a representation of a shared experience and a
Yeah.
Yeah.
shared history, right? That people use to kind of build an identity and find who they are. So like identifying that and saying, okay, how do we express it? How do we interact with it? How do we become a part of it? Like that is interesting as a creative because we are directly contributing to it in
Mhm.
building on those stories. Um, we are taking past stories and retelling them. We're trying to inject them into our work to build like these touch points, these references that somebody can pick it up and say, "Oh, I recognize that character." Because
Mhm.
like even the discussions around diversity and things like that nowadays, um, it's really about using authenticity, using that shared, bringing about that shared experience to
Mhm.
kind of show that it's not just one set of people who matter, I guess.
Right.
Um, yeah, I feel like I kind of waxed poetic a bit there.
No,
uh,
but you're right though. You're absolutely right because I mean, culture transcends time and generations.
Mm.
And as much as culture can shift, the core of
Mm.
it generally doesn't.
Right.
So
Mm.
it is about finding out how you tell the stories to a new generation. And even before technology, the stories were changing with each generation because understanding of the nature around us and the world around us changed what you might have thought about something. Because you tell the same story 100 years ago and it wouldn't, it makes sense then. But when you tell it now, the mind is just, the way we think is different. So it doesn't hit as hard, but you
Mhm.
tell it in a more modern context and it works. And that is what I think um, bringing the culture creatively to people is finding a creative way to take the culture and tell the story to the new generation. So it's not about diluting, but about delivering to a new understanding through a new lens.
All right. All right. That's cool. That's cool. I definitely see that and definitely agree. I think there's another aspect that we don't, well, we probably don't consciously touch on it that much, but it's also sharing of experiences with other people who are not necessarily a part of it. Like,
Yes.
I think that's also important to touch on
Yeah.
as a that's what you're doing as a creative. You're exposing your history, your lessons,
Hmm.
uh, and your way of thinking to other people. You're sharing that with them. Like, this kind of dovetails into the next point. Like, how do we how do we do that? How do we continue to contribute to culture, build on, in a way that is authentic and is not necessarily just trying to cash in? Because we've seen that with other work, of
Hmm.
our own work. We've seen people adopt the reggae brand. We've seen people adopt those type of things for their own gain and not necessarily being Jamaican themselves. They kind of just adopted brand Jamaica for whatever reason,
Hmm.
right? Because it
Yeah.
has that cachet. How do we tell those stories? How do you guys think about that with your own work? Um,
I don't know. Like, it's. I feel like the answer can be dramatically different for each person.
Indeed.
Um, for me, it's. I feel like at least my current work is not necessarily obvious what my direct cultural tie-ins are in my games. But I always, outside of my work, when I talk about it, when I share it, I always try and incorporate my country, my history, I never forget where I'm from. Like I want people to understand that this is, despite the game like Super Space was about space, despite that it's still a Jamaican game. It's a Jamaican made game.
Hmm.
And I think that's important to me. Like it's important for people to know that these things can come from different places all over the world, and my influences from growing up, from just all throughout life, are can be seen whether obvious or not in this game. And it doesn't just have to be the music, which I mean, at some point I want to have more Jamaican inspired music in there, but it doesn't just have to be that.
yeah, I think that's that's interesting. So there's a nugget there that I want to pick at a bit more. Like, um, authentically expressing the culture doesn't like can be more than just incorporating themes in the work. It's
Hmm.
like can be
Yeah.
acknowledging like your own creative what I should say inspirations just outside. Like you are a Jamaican developer. You know you're born and grew
Yeah. Like I
from
feel
that.
like it comes naturally. Like if I wanted to go make like a Chinese game, I can't do that and be authentic because I'm not Chinese. Like I don't
Hmm.
know anything. I could go and research the all different things,
Hmm.
and I could try, but
Hmm.
it won't be the same. Whereas everything I make will have some touch of my culture, of our culture in it because that's just that's who we are.
And they say that leads me, the words that you said a while ago, both of you, lead me straight to my point about that authenticity. Um, where I start with trying to bring culture into my games is through the
Hmm.
language.
Hmm.
Come, I have to step out and just put patois in my game, them, you see me?
Yeah, dog.
Like it starts with the language for me because one of the greatest pain points I have had my entire life with media is the inauthentic
Yeah.
Jamaican accents in
Look at fake
video
Jamaicans,
games,
like, yeah, man.
movies, animated shows,
Everything
everything.
I Rimiji.
Like it's been the pain point. So
Horrible.
that is why Wash Bear Workshop, the very first thing when we started creating these personalities for raccoons. Raccoons don't exist in Jamaica, but the raccoon, the leader of the bunch of raccoons, is a Jamaican, and he has a
Out to
Jamaican
many one
accent.
people, dog. Out to many
Yeah,
one people.
exactly, and
To
that
be
is how we'll
fair,
bring it.
if raccoons existed in Jamaica, I'm pretty sure we would call them washbear.
Probably,
Like we'd
yeah,
see if you see it, you call it a
yeah.
washbear.
You'd call it a
Catch a
wash
watch
bear for
bear,
you, cause
man.
you'd see it
Yeah.
down at the river. You'd see it by the river, washing the thing them.
Yeah,
You know, just be like, is a
Yeah.
wash bear that? So
Yeah.
I mean, it starts with the language for me. That's how I want to bring the authenticity. I want people to hear what an authentic Jamaican accent sounds like, and they might hear it, and they might be like, "What is this?" Because that's not what they're used
Not
to.
what I used to, yeah, but it's I guess our job to let them know that this is actually what
Exactly.
it should be.
That is what every culture around the world has to do to make things authentic. Because I can get up and I can put on a cowboy hat, I can put on a cowboy boots, and I could put on spurs and everything. And mind you, that is actually funny enough one of the most Jamaican things you can do, because dressing up like that and going to a dance hall party is not unfathomable. It's actually quite common because Jamaicans are loud and they want to show out. And
Right.
going dressed like a cowboy is very Jamaican if you go to a dance hall party. If you're walking through half a tree like that, you probably get looked at funny. But I can't do that and say I'm a cowboy, but I can bring my voice into the game. I can bring the voices of the other Jamaicans into the game to give it that authentic Jamaican flair. Make the raccoon have a Jamaican personality. And I'm not going to lie, raccoons are pretty Jamaican because they're ginnels, they're cons. Like,
Wow.
Oh
like,
wow. Okay. Okay.
like a raccoon is not very far from the personality of Anansi. And Anansi, what is more Jamaican than Anansi? Like, I mean, I'm not saying that all Jamaicans are con artists,
Thank
but
you. Because
Please, thanks.
I'm definitely not saying that. But it is the generalship. Jamaicans will take anything, and no matter how bad it is, they're going to take it and make it funny because, I mean, Bob Marley
that's
said
true.
every little thing
That's
is going
true.
to be all right,
Yeah.
and that is what the word general even really mean for me. It's
Mhm.
really just about even tricking somebody into feeling good about something. That's really it. Because even when somebody passes, we'll have to take the time and make um, some jokes about this person that has passed, because we want everybody around us to feel good. We want people to be happy. When people pass, we throw a party to
Right.
remember them. Like,
Yeah.
that is who we are. We will look at you and trick you into feeling good, and that is and so like that's what those raccoons are for me. So bringing the language and bringing the music into it to give it the authentic taste is definitely a thing for me.
Okay. I respect that you touch on the language part because that is something that is definitely difficult for me personally to kind of work with, and that is because I have like a complicated relationship with, I guess, for lack of a better word, my own Jamaicanness. Like it feels, it because of our place, our cultural colonial backdrop, there are a weird mix of colorism and stuff that gets muddled in our daily life, right? So touching on language and what is authentically Jamaican is important to me, and but I recognize it's not necessarily my own strength. And just figuring out how to navigate that and know how to acknowledge my own Jamaicanness and my own experience in my own work is important.
Hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why I think this panel is kind of cool. It's just looking at the different ways in which people can think about their background and think about how they can inject that into their creative process. So for me, I don't have a strong, I guess Jamaican tongue is the word
Never you say
there.
that.
No, I
Miss
can't. I have
Lou,
to.
Miss
I,
Lou is rolling in her grave. Never you say that.
she will roll in her grave. But you see, the thing is, if I attempt, I am cursed with the uptown language when I'm ready.
I
Right?
mean, that's what people say about me too. But there's this thing about culture, and this is not limited to Jamaican culture alone.
Hmm.
It's any place that has a rich culture. There's this thing about you gatekeep the culture even with your own people.
Hmm.
And it's not, I don't see it as something good because I don't believe that you can be defined in your Jamaicanness. Jamaica is a country that belongs to every Jamaican, and who you are as a Jamaican, there is just who you are as a Jamaican. That is what
Right.
being Jamaican is. It's like thinking about how patois sounds in St. Thomas versus Kingston
Hmm.
versus St. Elizabeth
It's very
versus
different.
Montego Bay.
Yeah.
They're all completely different. And a Jamaican from Kingston who has never heard Montego Bay patois is not going to understand.
You said that, and
Facts.
that's straight facts because I can remember, like, if you hear some people talking in Saint Bess, it sounds like a completely different
Yeah,
language.
different language.
Completely different language.
Yeah,
In
same
Kingston,
Um,
island,
it's
but
where you did there. In Montego Bay's where you been did there. I didn't know what that mean the first
excuse
time I
me.
heard it. Exactly, exactly. Where you
Who
been
been?
did there.
Who
Like
been? Where that come from?
don't worry
it's
about that, father.
it's it's
Yeah.
it's lang and that's language and that's not unique to Jamaica as well.
Right.
If
Right.
you go to Japan, it's the same thing. The way they speak in Kyoto, in Tokyo, is completely different from how they speak in Osaka. Like
Even here, in like
in
America too, like
yeah,
Georgia versus New York versus California, very different.
yeah, yeah.
Very, very
So
different.
never, it's never to think that there is a more authentic sounding person from a culture than
Right.
another.
It's
If
just
you are of
different.
that culture, you are
It's
of that
different.
culture,
Yeah.
but they are different. You speak differently, and that's it. And as long as you're speaking in your native tongue, that is authenticity.
Right.
That is
I,
authenticity.
I like that. I love that. I love that. Right? So I'm gonna steal that and like just yeah.
Yeah, dog. Take that because
but
yeah.
but circling back to what I was trying to bring up a while ago is that for me, I was just looking at my other strengths, and what I would want to, how I would want to express my
Hmm.
culture, my background, and for me, that is like 9 out of 10 all my characters are black. Like if there is a character, a male character in there, he probably will have dreads. Why? Because I have dreads. And that's the sum total of it, right? And that's my background, and it's there. I'm not a lifelong uh, element wrestler, but I haven't had
Dreads your
dreads
whole
all my
life.
life.
Yeah.
But I identify with it. Like it's a part of me. It's my hair,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's something I don't see expressed
And
accurately or
that is
properly.
a good point as well, because again, that is a part of the culture as well. And especially something like hair. Hair is actually something that has been suppressed across many cultures.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And being able to wear your hair exactly like this, including in Jamaica. There was a time
Oh
where,
yeah, still.
like this, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have had the job I had in the government
Correct.
for 7 years because I had locks. So that is
Yeah.
important too, because that is also one of the contentions in video games right now. Because in
Hmm.
video games, black people have three
Three
hairstyles:
hairstyles.
an
Three.
afro,
Mm-hmm.
dreadlocks, and I don't call them waves. If you know anything about geography, I call them swash and backwash because that's not waves. Like,
And what makes it worse is that usually none of those look good anyway. It's not
yeah,
like a
they
nicely
usually
done
don't.
dreads. It's
No.
like,
Mm-mm.
what is this?
Mm-mm. So
Mm-mm.
that is
Yeah.
also important. So you doing that, creating those characters with that look brings the culture out as well.
Yep.
And the culture
Yep.
that we're representing isn't simply just Jamaican culture or Caribbean culture, it's black culture. It
And
is.
I think that goes back to something that I
Because
had
we are
said,
black people.
right? Like I think it goes back to what I said earlier about it being authentic because it's just whatever you know.
Hmm.
Like you're Jamaican, and so whatever you bring out from yourself is you bringing out Jamaican culture.
Mm. All right. Yeah.
Like your experience is a Jamaican experience. If you tell that experience, it's Jamaican
It's a
culture.
Jamaican experience,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, right.
And there's
Okay.
another Jamaican out there sharing that experience who wants the story told. And this applies across all cultures.
Right.
I think we kind of stumbled on like this deep little nugget there. Yeah. Culture is all about shared experience, and the art of creating is sharing experience, and
Yeah.
literally the process of making culture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the new experiences that will happen now, in fact, will create a new culture. Like the shift between the last 100 years, 50 years from now, there are going to be stories told about what's happening right now, and that's
Mm.
going to add to the culture. So it's all about carrying those experiences forward, like so that other people can experience them. Like that's all it is. Like finding a creative way to do that, and as long as you're engaging people with those stories, then as far as I'm concerned, you've done it creatively, because that's what creativity is about: engaging others to
Right.
sharing an experience.
Right.
All right, yeah, that works. Um, so I think we kind of like gone pretty deep into this. I'm not sure how much time we have left, but I want to know like specific examples. Like I know Zane you touched on like with Washbear, like the language and baking that into the game. Like I think it was on the tutorial levels for you, or just the general dialogue itself.
Oh, the general dialogue is like
Nice.
Mini is very Jamaican,
Is
and
it going to be voice acted or just text?
yeah, it's going to be voice acted.
Okay, that
There's
makes it
already voice
easier.
acting in there, and the
Yeah. Yeah.
intention is
Nice.
to voice act straight through the game at many
That's it.
different points in time.
All right, cool. So like that's an example for how you plan to express it, and then like Graham, you had touched on
For me, it's the
what
music for sure.
for you it's the music definitely.
Yeah,
All right,
because it's
and
not
then
going to be like, oh, here's Bob Marley in my thing, but it's like I'm currently trying to get Jamaican dancehall and or reggae artists to make like a new kind of like bring their voices to not traditional beats, so not like the traditional reggae backgrounds, but it's still
mhm,
their voice, still their vocals, and their
mhm.
vocals are an instrument, you know. So it's like
Hmm.
blending that into something new, adding to the culture.
Okay. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that kind of builds on the same thing we're adding to the experience. So I know that for your project right now, it's kind of lo-fi,
it's
feel
a
good
slow
tunes
fi.
of
I like that. Not what you meant, but I like that.
um, feel good, relaxing experience, like and bringing in the good vibes of island music into that.
Which I mean is also some of them are relaxing, slow, like that kind of
Mhm.
vibes, good vibes music anyway.
All
So
right,
it's like
yeah,
a different take on that.
yeah, I can see that working. I'm actually excited to hear how that comes up.
Me too.
Yeah. Like I'm just trying to think of different ways because like this entire talk so far is kind of it's I came into the panel thinking one thing that we were going to discuss, and right now it's kind of flipped on its head, meaning
In
the
one
whole
sentence, what did you think we were going to discuss?
whoa in one sentence I was going to think of the ways in which we can be authentic Jamaicans in our creative process.
But is that not
Uh,
what we've been talking about?
Not really.
I think he's just realizing that no matter what we do, we're being authentically
I know, that's what
Jamaican.
I'm saying. Like
Yeah, that's
we're
pretty
just
much it.
being authentic Jamaicans. The three of us are very different people
Hmm.
with different backgrounds and all that, but we're still each authentically Jamaican.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's different perspectives on the same shared experience and adding
Right.
to it continuously. It- It's kind of beautiful in just this cycle that just keeps building.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because even in my own projects, like I tend to be a role playing fan. So give me your dragons, give me your all the little beasties and those type of stuff. We don't necessarily have like a deep background there. We have our ghost stories. We have a
I don't
lot.
know what you're talking about. We have
We have
we have a lot of dragon in Jamaica.
green
We
I
lizard
was
is
drink
not
we
a
about to
drink
say
it.
dragon.
dog.
We
I was
drink
about to
it.
say.
Okay.
Oh, that's not what I'm going to say at all. I was going to say the croaking lizards, dog,
Nope.
dragons.
But the ground lizard
A
them,
ground lizard. I've been attacked by a ground
ground
lizard.
lizards will chase. Those things
Dragons.
are vicious. What?
Glenn, here's what you do. Make a JRPG, a Jamaican RPG
Yeah, I like
about
that. I like that.
about
Thank you
dragons.
so
You know what I mean?
much, because I have a game plan called Jankuno. and I'm going to call it a JRPG now.
There you
Thank you
go.
so
There you
much.
go. So after this, you can hold us to this. We're all going to,
Mm.
at some point in our careers, try to make a JRPG.
Yeah, JRPG.
Um,
I
I feel
love
like we
that.
had this conversation before, but yeah.
I love that so much.
With my own stuff, I try to work in like I mentioned earlier, the whole skin color thing. But even in the creature design sort of things that I do, I would pull like from the iguana. I have like some design based off of
You have the
uh,
Patu.
the patu. Yeah, exactly, pattern. One of my legendary beasts is actually
Yeah,
based off of a indigenous owl. Um, some other things, and just kind of sneak it in. That's how it feels to me. Like I'm just like, I'm gonna sneak this in there. Like nobody's gonna
yeah,
know, but it's gonna. And I think
Yeah, it
about it
doesn't doesn't
in the
matter.
same way of like Mario and the whole thing with the Tanuki tail and Tanuki suit and all of that stuff. Like
exactly.
Right,
nobody
right.
recognizes it.
We would have never known it
Mar.
until they told us that like it was a part of their
Yeah,
culture. Never.
it's it's a Japanese game about an Italian plumber, but that game is Japanese as hell. Like
Right.
the Tanuki, just the overall everything about the story is very anime. Like
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
crazy
Yeah. Yeah.
because you have the Goomba. What is a Goomba? I don't know. That's very anime. Like when you think about all the way the Onis look and everything, like Bowser is not very far from I think it's the Kappa Demon.
Yeah.
Like so it's just about doing that. Like
Hmm.
nobody looks at Mario and thinks immediately it's a Japanese game with any cultural thing, but if you
It is.
actually know,
Yeah.
it is. So it's, I mean, if you have a
And
game,
I don't think they intentionally, outside of Tanuki Suit, I guess, I don't think that anyone intentionally was like, "Yo, we're making a Japanese game." It
yeah,
was just they made it look the way they did because that's what they knew.
that's what they know.
Yeah.
If you have a tree monster and you name it Ligonum Vitamus, like that's a Jamaican character right there. Like so,
Based on a tree.
it's really just about telling your story with what you know. It will
Right.
come out. It will come out.
Mhm.
I mean, unless you're trying not to do it,
Can
it's
you suppress
probably
it?
going to
Right.
come
Is
out.
yeah. You're going to whether big or small is going to come out
Yeah.
as Jamaican culture.
All right. Okay. I think that's a very nice point to just kind of wrap up this panel. Thanks guys for being a part of it. I feel like this was I don't know. I'm walking away with this from this with like this is my brain is going still. So thanks.
Think, Glenn.
I'm glad we
Think.
could. I'm glad we could help you, Glenn. Exactly.
Thank
Thank
you. Thank you.
yeah.
I hope other people enjoy this one as much as I have right now. Like,
Right. Yeah. It's been good. It's been good.
all right,
I feel
all right,
reinforced in my culture.
Facts.
all right. Just to wrap things out, do you guys want to plug your socials where people can find you?
Yes.
All right,
I
same.
am
Oh,
at.
sorry, Graham.
Oh, I just. Sorry. I am at Grammar of Legend everywhere on the internet, and you can go to grammarlegend.com or superspaceclub.com to wishlist my game, which is coming out soon, TM, on Xbox and Steam.
Well, I'm just joined on the internet. I hope that will be somewhere on the screen here. But just join on the internet. You can also find my team at justevstudios.com as well as Just Dev Studios on Twitter. Twitter is mostly where we exist.
Same.
But you can also possibly find us on Instagram. So that's Just Join and Just Dev Studios. And Wash Bear Workshop will be on Steam sometime soon. I hope. Let's
Soon,
see.
TM.
All
DM.
right. And I am Glenn Henry, better known as Spritewrench, face and fingers behind that studio. Spritewrench on pretty much everywhere: YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all over the place. Thank you for being a part of our panel and have a wonderful.
Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
What good?
Well, good.
Take up yourself.